Hi, welcome to the wonderful world of Mako, and today we're going to talk about Duncan French dimensions. These are dimensional glazes. So they are frit based, they are going to fire shiny, and because they're dimensional, you can think of it like a puffy paint, okay? It is going to give you a textured, raised design, so it's great for outlining, details, writing, and you can do all kinds of fun work with these. This is a cute, fun, and funky little plate. You can see that there's color within it, and I'm going to demonstrate this in a minute on how to use it as an outliner. What's nice is if you do all your outlining first, you can use it as a little dam and a little well to hold in all of your colors. This is a beautiful piece. It's almost like a stained glass or a little work of art by Monet himself. So by putting the French dimensions in there, we can puddle in all of the crystal glazes and drop and fill some different colors, and it'll hold it in there nicely for us. Okay, so a couple of things just before we get started. Let's talk about some different tips and tricks. A new bottle is really nice. Everything just flows out of it. You are going to want to shake it up prior to usage, just because a lot of times the solids and the liquids can separate a little bit. So make sure that you shake up your glaze, whichever color you're going to use. Right now, Mako is manufacturing the Duncan French dimensions in black and white. Those are your two color options. Shake up your bottle really good. And I always shake it upside down a little bit. Oh, see, you can see how some of the water was in there and it came out. So it probably wouldn't hurt if I shake it up a little bit more since there was a little water head on there. These are a fired product. You do need to have a kiln to utilize these. And then typically I would start this on something that is not my actual project, just for this reason. Okay, so if you can't get it stirred up really good, there is a trick that you can do. This little tip can be popped off, okay? So you can pop this off, take a bamboo skewer or a toothpick or something thin, get down in there and stir it up, and then you can put the cap back on, okay? So that way you know that you've got it stirred up good. There we go. This is what it should come out. So when you get it real watery like that, make sure that you stir it up good or shake it up really good. So when I do outlining with these, it's also good to have a little sponge to wipe off the tip. Keep a sponge nearby to keep the tip nice and clean. I like to hold it a little bit above the surface of the bisque and let it flow down and do my design work. So I'm just going to get a little funky here. Now see how it got a little bit thinner? What I'm going to do is just kind of get rid of my excess. I'm going to start back where I was. And you want to try to maintain the same amount of pressure. Woo! You can see I got a big blob there. So here where it broke, I can just come back and fill that in. It's going to smooth out or level out a little bit in the firing. You can also even it out like I just did with the tip, or you can take a little toothpick and even that out, okay? So there are definitely ways of making this work. So I can do lines. It's great for textured dots. There's a little bit of it's smoothed out, so let me show you again. It had a big tip on there. It smoothed out and rounded out. So it gives you a nice dimensional work. So you can see this is obviously the black. Now let's say you've had your bottle for a while and the tip clogs. You can take a pin and clean the tip out. You can also, again, pop this tip off. You can soak it in some water until it clears out. And if your glaze gets a little too thick, you can add a drop or two of water. And seriously, you just want to start with a drop. Put the lid back on or put your thumb over this, shake it up really good, mix it up, and then try it and see if it comes out good. If it's still too thick, add a drop or two at a time. Don't go crazy and fill this up because you will over thin the product and ruin the point of having a dimensional glaze. All right. Also, what you can do is if you have a bottle where it's taken a little bit or it's a little too thick, warm it up in your hands. You can hold it in your hands. You can get a bottle or a cup of hot water and set it in there to kind of thin, let it loosen up in there and then shake it up again. So there are definitely tips and tricks on how you can use these and make it always work for you. So you can see right now, I have this little puddle. What I like about it is kind of what we have on these samples here, is I can take, especially my crystal glazes, because I like to get those in there and really drop and fill and plump it up and make it really pretty. So you can see I have my crystals in there. I can come in here, stir it up, and I can just drop my glaze within this little circle and have my crystals in there and just do a little drop and fill, push and pull. And the French dimension is going to act like a little dam. It's an easy product to use. It adds some design and dimension to your work. Now here, I got a little bit of my color on top of the French dimensions. I'm just gonna wipe it back. Probably should have let it dry a little bit better so you don't smash it down, but look how cool that is. Now, a couple things I want to remind you. These plates are now considered decorative. We do not consider French dimensions a dinnerware safe product. By that we mean when you have textured surfaces that could potentially trap bacteria, and since an earthenware, we do not put it in the dishwasher to sanitize it, we recommend on decorative surfaces. So if I had just used on the rim of this plate, not where the food's going to go or a knife and fork is going to potentially nick it, that would have been fine. Okay, same with this plate. This is super, super cute, but we don't want to use it for a dinnerware plate because of the fact that we have the French dimensions or the texture on there. So right now we have this in black and white, but let's say that you want orange, yellow, green, another color. What can we do? Well, again, you can take this, take the little cap off, and you can add easy stroke concepts or stroke and coat to tint this. So I would probably, if you wanted a lot of it, go ahead and tint the whole bottle. But let's say you just want a little bit, take the lid off, pour some out onto a palette, and then mix in some of your colors that I just mentioned. And tint it that way, and then you can put it back into another bottle or the same bottle. Squeeze it out, now you have it tinted. You can also use the white and paint over it with stroke and coats. Okay, so you can put a coat of stroke and coat over it, and that's going to change it as well. It depends on what your design is, so some of this will be artist choice, but the beauty is knowing that you can tint French dimensions to get a different color. So it extends the color palette in your design work by being able to tint it. Again, if you want to thin it down, drop or two of water at a time. So let's say you're working on this plate and you, just as you release the pressure, and then you squeezed again and there was an air bubble and it spurts all over the place. Of course I can't get it to do it right now, but how do you want to remove this? What I recommend is get a palette knife, X-Acto knife, or something that is easily going to remove it. Sometimes the end of a brush will work nicely if it has a scoop to it. So what I mean by that is this brush is chiseled, and if you have that handy, you can let this dry a little bit, and then what you're going to do is lift off or scrape off the French dimensions. Okay, now I do have a residue there, so I'm going to show you that I'm just knocking that off. You want to lift it off. What I would not do is take a damp sponge and try to wipe it off. What you're going to do is you're going to shove that pigment, especially the black, into your bisque. Now it is easier if I had base coated this tile completely with foundations glaze or stroke and coat or glaze of choice, and then dropped my color on top of it. It would be a lot easier to lift off. But when you have it directly on the bare bisque, it is so much easier to let it set up a little bit and then scratch it or lift it off, okay? I could take a damp sponge and clean this up as much as possible. You do get air bubbles every once in a while when you're working this. Just take a pin and pop it. And like I was showing you, I'm gonna use the white this time just so you can see how pretty that is. Make sure again that I have it shaken up really good. Up. See, this one is clogged. No matter what I do, it's not gonna come out. So this is where I'm gonna take the tip of this. I'm going to take a pin and poke it to clear that tip out, because sometimes that glaze can dry in this little tip part right here and it gets a little harder as it dries. Clean that up and then put it back on there. All right, so if you're like me, you couldn't find a pin, I could use a little tack. Now what I don't want to do is get a huge, something larger than the opening of this. So I can also take a paper clip, since I couldn't locate a pin, which is not unusual in my household or my studio, and see that kind of poked through. I also do tend to like going from the inside out, so that if there is anything going on with this tip, it kind of pushes it out instead of opening the orifice a little bit more. What you don't want to do is take a pair of scissors and clip this. Then your glaze is going to come out way too much. See how now it's coming out really nicely. See sometimes how it spurts? You may have heard that, saw that, because I had air in it. But look how nice that is just flowing out. And it's like anything else. The more you practice, the more it becomes easy. Look at thicker, thinner. I could write my name. Now, right now, I'm really pushing it down and it kind of flattens out, as opposed to when I let it drop down onto it. So directly against the bisque, gives it one look, letting it drop, flow down, gives it another look. It's versatile, it's fun, it's easy to use, and you can manipulate the colors. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy using French dimensions.